Hi everyone, I'm Jo Fry and this is my channel Jojo Fry Rocks, and I wanted to talk a little bit, not about guitars necessarily today, but a bit about my 20 or so, well, just about 21 years now of being a fan of a band called The Darkness, which I've talked a little bit about in my previous videos, particularly around my PRS guitar. But there are some things that I thought would be fun to share after all this time, and some reflections that I think people might find interesting if you're a fan of the band, or generally just if you're a music fan and you have similar experiences of following a band and going to gigs and the kind of things that can happen and the fun of it all, as well as some of the less fun things, I suppose. So I posted recently a short documentary that was made by BBC Three that I was part of, which was made at the time when The Darkness really blew up in the UK. They became massively famous. They won like 3 Brit Awards that year in 2004, off the back of their single I Believe in a Thing Called Love, really, and their hit album Permission to Land. Here's my very very old and beaten up copy of Permission to Land, which hasn't really survived very well through the last 20 years of house moves, including international moves. But there we are, that's physical media for you. So yes, the documentary was an interesting thing. I heard about it initially through some of the forums and online communities that I was part of at that time, which are I feel quite different from the things that we have today. You had The Darkness had their website, and there was a section on there for fans to communicate with other fans. So there was like a forum there with administrators who would, who were the admins for these various kind of chat groups. And I got quite heavily involved in this and actually made some real friendships and relationships through these forums. And that's how I heard about the fact that the BBC wanted to make this documentary, and they wanted to feature people who really loved the band, who really loved The Darkness. So a group of people, like lots of different people, said that they were going to be involved and that they were going. It was kind of an open invitation. So I decided that I would go along, mainly because I thought it would be a good opportunity to actually meet some of the other people that I'd been chatting to, some of these fans on these forums. I thought it would be a nice opportunity. So in order to try to make sure that I did get featured in the programme, I wanted to find a way to make myself stand out and not just be kind of a talking head and just go on there and say, oh yeah, I think their music's really great. So I wanted to get myself kind of a catsuit type outfit, similar to something that Justin might wear on stage. Obviously that was his trademark back then. They were super well known for that. That was kind of part of their appeal, part of their image. So I started sort of trawling Google and various kind of websites to see if I could find something similar, which was very unlikely because it was hardly something that was fashionable at the time. And Justin obviously had his specially made for him, tailor-made for him. In fact, their recent documentary that came out last year sort of shows them, Justin and Frankie and Dan actually, going along and having sort of outfits made by a tailor for them. So yeah, these were not things that you could very easily come by. But at the time, so I think I've mentioned before, I worked in a call centre whilst I was studying to kind of support myself. And so I was still a student at this time. I think I was doing my master's at the time. And a colleague that worked with me was a young guy. He was only about 19. He was from South Africa. And he was like a fashion design student. And I've been talking about this thing that I wanted to do. And I just talked about the darkness all the time. It must be really super boring for everyone that I worked with. And he said, oh, I'll make you one. I'll just make you one. He had a sewing machine and everything. And he said, if you go and choose and buy some material and come round and, we'll do your measurements and everything and we'll design it and I'll make it for you, which was absolutely amazing. I was absolutely blown away by somebody just having the ability to do that. I just was kind of like, wow, that's awesome. I'm gonna have a catsuit made for me just like Justin. How cool is that? And so he did. And this was the resulting item. So this is a picture of me actually at Earl's Court, which is where they did the filming for the documentary, or most of the filming with the fans that they did for the documentary. So as you can see, I chose a kind of silver sequined material. It was very, very thin. It's important to bear in mind. And it didn't really have much of a kind of lining either. And it was halter neck, so it was backless as well, which is super glamorous and looked amazing. And loved the flared bottoms of the trousers as well, just to give it that 70s vibe. And I also took my guitar, the one that I made, because again, I was trying to make sure that I stood out from everyone else, which I absolutely did with my catsuit and my guitar. And I managed to find these awesome trainers as well that were silver and matched perfectly and actually were kind of super comfortable, which was brilliant for, as I found out subsequently, going to gigs, because I could jump around, bounce around and, be on my feet for hours and hours at a time. But we'll get to that later. So I went along to that event and I did meet the people that I'd been chatting to on these online forums, which was really lovely. One of them, who I'd become really quite good friends with, was a DJ, and he gave me a copy. I don't know if you can see, but this is a promotional copy of the single "Get Your Hands Off My Woman." So that's quite an unusual thing. Not many people would have these. That would have been very, very early on. And I think "Get Your Hands Off My Woman" got to like number about 48 or something in the charts. Understandably, because it has quite a lot of swearing in it. It didn't get a lot of airplay. So it didn't do all that well. But really, it's one of my favourite songs of theirs, and I'm super happy that I've got this promotional copy of it. So I thought that would be a cool thing to share. So yes, so that would have been early 2004, probably kind of February. No, would have been before then. Must have been January, because when I met the other fans, I found out that a few of them were going along to a tour date, one of the European tour dates in Strasbourg, which was going to be at the end of February. And having lived in Strasbourg, that was where I spent my year abroad in France during my degree. I thought I'd love to go back there. You know, I know it's a place that I know. Obviously, I speak the language. It's very easy for me to go over there. So I kind of joined up with a couple of other people, and we started making arrangements to go and see them play in Strasbourg. I had at this point only been to see The Darkness one time, and that was towards the end of 2003. And I'd been down to Plymouth. They played Plymouth Pavilions, which is a fairly decent venue. So sort of December 2003, I'd been to see them. It was on their Elf Hazard tour. And I'd been a little bit disappointed because I wasn't anywhere near the front. I couldn't really see very well. The sound was okay, but it's a fairly decent venue, but it's not the best. So I hadn't had a really great experience of going to see them the first time. So I was really keen to go again as soon as possible, and they were doing these European dates, and I thought, well, now I know some other people that are going, so I'm not going to have to kind of go on my own. My partner at the time was too busy with his job and everything, so he wouldn't have been able to go. But I was, of course, still studying, so I could kind of manage my time around that. So yeah, we decided to kind of all meet up over there and go to the Strasbourg gig together, and that was probably the best time that I've ever seen them. That's still probably the best gig that I've ever been to. For a whole number of reasons. So one reason was because they were supported by a band called the Wild Hearts. This is Ginger. Ginger's the front man of the Wild Hearts. And the Wild Hearts were a band that I really loved ever since kind of the late 80s, I suppose, early 90s. They've been going for a long time by this point. So I was super chuffed that the Wild Hearts were the support act, and I got this excellent picture of Ginger, which I've subsequently had signed. But yeah, that was great. And then the whole show, the whole gig was just like the best thing I've ever seen, and I still think that now. We were super close to the stage, so I was able to get some really good photos. And actually, some of these were ones that my friend got with. He had a proper DSLR camera, which I didn't have anything like that at the time. It's a nice one of Frankie. I've got some really good ones of Justin's kind of guitars and outfits that he wore. Again, we were right at the front, and I mean right at the front. So here I am in my catsuit with some of the other people that I'd gone with. And we actually got one of the security guys to take this photo, which they did, because they were always really nice. They're always super nice to us. It's Justin on one of his, I'm not sure if you can see that, he's on the shoulders of one of the roadies doing one of his walkabouts in the crowd, which was super fun. Obviously gets everyone going. And then, yeah, we'd actually stood out in the cold in Strasbourg for, I don't know, maybe about 6 hours, maybe a little bit more. this is prior to the gig, so we were hoping to sort of meet the band and catch them on their way in to the sound check, which we did actually manage to do. And they were, you know, they were absolutely fine with that. And that's how I got this. That's how I got this photo. So I'm absolutely frozen to the bone by this point, but I didn't care because I got to meet Justin and have a lovely picture with him. And he was super nice, obviously, and just really charming and lovely and sweet. And so the rest of the band. So there's us getting things signed by Dan and Frankie. Don't they look young there? I mean, I know it's 20 years ago, but they really do look very young there. Justin very happily signing things for people. I mean, they were just so nice. They were really accommodating, really friendly, super cool. Dan in one of his lovely jackets there. I always think Dan has got such great taste in clothes. He's always really well dressed and well presented. He always wears beautiful jackets and coats, and he's just always been like that. I think that's lovely. And yes, so when we'd kind of been let into the venue, they actually let us watch the sound check, which was fab, because nowadays, like, if you want to do that kind of thing, normally you have to pay for like a VIP ticket. So for example, I'm going to see Richie Kotzen in the summer, and I've had to pay for the VIP package to enable me to go in, have a picture with him, have something signed and watch the sound check. And that's fine, you know, that's all well and good. It just kind of doesn't quite feel the same in a way, like you haven't earned it. You know, I feel like I've earned these photos. I've earned the experience of meeting Justin and meeting the band, having stood out, you know, in the freezing cold. It was snowing as well. It was February in northeastern France, which gets really very cold. But yeah, so obviously it felt super rewarding when we actually did manage to have this experience. And we also met some of their crew. So this is a guy called Sean Teague, who is more commonly known as Stig. And he is an exceptional guitar tech. And he was Justin's guitar tech at the time. So I had a lot to talk to him about. Actually, it was almost as much fun meeting him and speaking to him as it was sort of meeting any of the band members, really. And I'm really hoping that I'm going to get a chance to get him onto my channel. He's really, really busy. He's with Judas Priest now. Very interesting guy, and very, very kindly let me go onto the tour bus, and this is how I got these photos and got the opportunity to have a little bit of a play around with a couple of Justin's Les Pauls, his custom silver burst, and of course the custom pink burst Les Paul. And again, for me, that experience was almost as good, if not better, than the actual gig itself. Like, just having being given the opportunity to sit on the tour bus and have a go on these guitars is something that I will never ever forget. And I have these pictures up. I look at them every day. They just make me really, really happy. I actually tried to find out what happened to these guitars, because I know that Justin, I think he sold them and gave the money to charity quite a long time ago. Well, in fact, he told me. He subsequently, a number of years later, told me that he had. So I have no idea where they are now. I knew that they were sold through a dealer in London. There were actually 3. There was also a Gold Burst. I never saw that one, and I don't remember ever seeing him play it. But there were 3, and I think collectively they were sold for like 30 grand, so about kind of 10 grand each, which doesn't surprise me at all, really. They were absolutely stunning guitars. So yeah, it'd be fascinating to know what became of them. So yeah, and actually off the back of that gig, I sort of stayed in contact with Stig, and we exchanged a few emails, and we'd kind of, he'd just keep me in the loop about what the Darkness were doing, where they were going next, and he said, "Oh, are you going to come to any gigs in America?" And I said, "Well, I wasn't planning to." I mean, it's one thing just sort of like hopping on a short flight over to France or something, but at that point, I think I'd only been to America one time in my life before, and that had been with my family, and I hadn't sort of done anything like that by myself or with a friend or anything. So no, it wasn't really something I was considering doing. And he said, "Oh, come over, and if you and your friends that he'd met, well, that we'd all been there together in Strasbourg," he said, if you guys want to come, I'll put you on the guest list." So I'd never had an offer like that before. I'd never, that just sounded like something that didn't happen to normal people. It sounded like that's something that happens in films and stuff, right? Or that's like, people who are super cool and live in Camden and they're friends with bands and rock stars get to go backstage to things. So, at the time, I was sort of blown away by this, and managed to talk one of my friends who I'd gone to the gig in Strasbourg with into going over to see the Darkness in LA, and taking up Stig's very kind offer of putting us on the guest list for this show. And I didn't really have enough money to be able to afford it, like the flight, the hotel, just anything about it, really, the ticket for the show. But I went ahead and booked it all anyway, just used credit card. And as it happened, very, very luckily, I suppose, but weirdly in a way, I had a little bit of money come through as inheritance. My grandfather passed away several years before then, but the payout that was due had taken like quite a while to come through, and so I'd sort of forgotten about it. I was 16 at the time when it happened. I didn't really I was very, very sad. I wasn't thinking about what I would get in terms of inheritance or anything. So I had just forgotten about it. And then I went ahead, I booked the flight, I found a hotel, booked the tickets and everything, and sort of thought, well, I'll worry about how I'm going to pay for this later. And my mum called and said, "Oh, that £500 from your granddad has come through. Do you want me to put it into your account?" And it was just sort of an uncanny thing, because that was almost the exact amount of money that I needed that would cover the whole trip, like the flights, the hotel, food and drink, the ticket for the gig, everything. So it was kind of like, almost like I had his blessing or something. I don't know. It was just like a sign that this is going to be good. You're going to enjoy this. This is the right thing to do. And okay, I probably could have used that money in a lot more sensible ways, but I don't think that's what my granddad would have wanted. I think he would have wanted me to go and enjoy myself and do something really, really, really memorable with it. I think if I had just, I don't know, paid something off or bought a new TV or something that would, I'd have thrown away long ago by now. It just wouldn't have been as meaningful. So the whole thing really meant a lot to me, for that reason. And so I was super excited. And I remember on the flight on the way over there, we kind of had I'd taken my Walkman kind of thing, my CD Discman player, and myself and my friend had like one earphone each, and we just listened to Permission to Land kind of on repeat, literally all the way through, on repeat for 11 hours, all the way to LA. I literally couldn't get enough of listening to this album. And actually I did have, at that time I had bought quite a lot of the singles as well, which was really cool, because you had some nice B-sides. So this one, Lover's Only Feeling, has got Planning Permission and Curse of the Tolland Man. Planning Permission, excellent song. I had the Christmas Time single, of course, and the song I Love You 5 Times, which is a really fun little song. Then I Believe in a Thing Called Love. The single's got some excellent B-sides, Making Out and Physical Sex. Growing on Me, of course, my favourite one, which has got How Dare You Call This Love and Bareback. Bareback is the track it's an instrumental track that they used to always play as the first song of their gigs. So you knew that when you heard the first sort of intro of Bareback, you knew they were coming out. So that's sort of a really, really, really exciting song. Then some of their later singles from One Way Ticket. But so at that time, going over to LA, I did have some of these B-sides that I had recorded onto a separate CD. So it was like almost having a second album anyway. So I could interchange them. Like, that's literally all I took. I took Permission to Land and my CD that I recorded of B-sides from the singles. So that, if we get fed up of listening to Permission to Land, but we didn't, I would have an alternative CD to put on. Back in the days before phones and iTunes and Spotify and all the streaming stuff that we've got now, this is what you had to do. You had to think in advance. You had to prepare. You had to burn CDs and create. If you wanted like a playlist, you had to like create your own, record your own CD. Anyway, so once we got over there, they were actually playing for 2 nights in LA. It was at the Henry Fonda Theatre in Hollywood. So we were actually staying at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. I think that's sort of like quite a famous hotel. I think it was like a 1930s one, which I love because I love all things Art Deco, and actually Hollywood's a fairly cool place in terms of like Art Deco stuff. That's the only thing. I mean, the rest of it, like everything else, is exactly as horrible and sleazy and dirty and generally kind of miserable as you would imagine Hollywood to be. Really actually quite rough, you know. So yeah, but the gig itself that we went to, so on the first night that we were there, we were on the guest list and everything, so we were there right at the front. It was fantastic. It was an awesome show. They went down, you know, really quite well. Justin did quite a lot of his interactive stuff with the crowd, and you know, everyone was kind of joining in with it and going along with it. And then afterwards, we kind of went backstage, and there were various, you know, people from the music industry there. I think people from their record label were there, along with kind of some other like minor celebrities who were over there as well, and who I think they'd invited along. I remember one of them was Steve Coogan, the guy who plays Alan Partridge, very, very well-known UK comedian. My friend said to me, I mean, we'd had a few beers at this point. My friend said to me, "Oh, I'll give you £5 or something if you go up to Steve Coogan and say, aha," you know, Alan Partridge's catchphrase, aha. So I just thought that was really, really funny and hilarious, which it isn't. And so, yeah, I did. I went over to him and I said, aha! He was unamused, to the point where I actually thought that he might headbutt me. So I just sort of backed off and left him alone. I thought it was funny. My friend thought it was funny as well. But yeah, so we were just kind of messing around, having fun, having a good time, having some beers, and you know, we sort of chatted a little bit, had a nice chat with Stig and caught up with him and everything, and yeah, we just generally had a good time. And then someone suggested that everyone should move on to I think the Rainbow Grill, which is a very, very famous bar in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard. And I think the band were kind of staying in a hotel kind of nearer to there. I think it might have been the Mondrian. I can't exactly remember, even though I did go there. I can't exactly remember where it was or what it was called. I think it was. So anyway, we all kind of loaded into some cabs, and I actually sat in a cab with Frankie, and we made our way over to the Rainbow Bar and Grill, which at this point I'm just, everything just feels surreal. Like, I had a little bit to drink, not too much, so I wasn't kind of wasted or anything, but nothing felt normal. Everything felt completely surreal. I couldn't get my head around what was going on. And I'm just sat kind of chatting to Frankie in the back of this cab on our way to the Rainbow Bar and Grill. It was one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. Really, genuinely. I was just like, who even am I at this point? And he was just chatting to me about everything and anything. Music, we were talking about how much we liked Carly Simon, I think, and things like that, you know, and who we thought were great singers, and yeah, and he was just lovely. He was just a really nice, really lovely guy, and you know, I think I was telling him all about how much I loved Justin, which I'm sure he wasn't really that interested in. But he did say something interesting to me, which was that he said, oh, well, Justin, you know, he doesn't exist. And I didn't really understand what he meant. And I thought, well, that's a weird thing to say. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that's not a real person. That's just a persona. Like, that isn't real, what you're seeing. And I kind of got it, but I think he was trying to be nice, and I think he was trying to kind of say, don't get yourself kind of too hung up on something that doesn't actually exist, because you'll be forever chasing something that isn't real. And I think that was actually I think he was genuinely trying to be nice. But the thing is, you can't tell someone something like that, like, especially not a fan. You know, a fan isn't going to respond by kind of saying, oh, all right, cheers, thanks then, I'll get my coat, you know, I'll be off then, thanks for clearing that up. You know, you, as a fan, I think, you know, or part of you knows that this is an image, you know, this is a mirage, this is not a real person, this is someone projecting an image or something that they are, you know, creating in a way. So you understand that, but that doesn't take anything away from how you feel about that thing that they've created, that person, that persona that they've created. Like, you can't stop having those feelings and those emotions that you feel about it. So in a way, it kind of doesn't really help you to know that it's just a fantasy and it's not real. But anyway, that didn't take anything away from the experience or the night that we were having, and we did in fact go to the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and you know, sure enough, Lemmy from Motorhead was sat at the end of the bar playing on the Pac-Man machine. So I was sort of like continuing to have this really surreal experience. So to try and kind of bring myself back down to earth in a way, I saw Stig, so I went over and said, oh, hey, shall we go and get some drinks? And so, you know, we just kind of went up to the bar and got some drinks, and we just kind of carried on chatting. And then I kind of saw the band going up some stairs. So just out of curiosity and kind of wondering what was up there, I suppose, I followed up after them. And so I think if anyone knows anything about the Rainbow, you'll know that the kind of upstairs room is where, like, the original, like, that was the original place where the Hollywood vampires would hang out. So it's kind of like this sort of slightly separate private room. And so I kind of followed Justin and the others up there. And the Foo Fighters were up there. Like, Dave Grohl was sitting there at this table. And so obviously they'd gone up there to hang out with the Foo Fighters. And I think for the first time in my life, I was properly starstruck. Dave Grohl is the most famous person that I have ever seen in real life. And I was there in this room and he was there sitting at this table. And I kind of almost forgot completely about Justin and the darkness and the other guys and everyone else and my friend and everyone else that I was there with. And I was just kind of stood there, probably open-mouthed, completely like frozen, not really knowing what to say or what to do, because there's Dave Grohl right there. And I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna have to turn around and go back down these stairs and just leave this situation, because I could just feel that I was about to say something and it was probably going to be something stupid. And I thought, you know what, I can't deal with saying something stupid and embarrassing in front of Dave Grohl. I just can't do that. I couldn't live with myself. So I just went back down the stairs, had another vodka and tried to calm myself down. At which point, I think after that, the person behind the bar started refusing to give us any more drinks, because it's really quite, the US is quite conservative in terms of how much alcohol they will actually serve you. So we sort of had to call it a night after that, because they wouldn't like give us any more drinks. And I was there in my silver catsuit again, so like I wasn't exactly anonymous, you know. I couldn't exactly sort of sneak up to the bar and like pretend to be someone else or something, you know. I was very recognisable because of what I was wearing. So all the people behind the bar were obviously like, you know, that British girl in the stupid silver outfit, like she's not having any more to drink. So unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, I'd had enough by that point anyway, and so we went back to our hotel, and you know, spent the next day just trying to process, I suppose, sort of everything that had happened the night before, and the fact that we were going to see them again the next night. So we're going to the next show. So we weren't really over the first one, and then we got to go and see them again. And we were, you know, it was kind of a similar thing. We were on the guest list and everything. But it was interesting. The second show didn't really quite go as well. And I think there was a different crowd, and I think it was more of a sort of music industry crowd. It didn't feel like a sort of genuine crowd of fans, because the first night, so the previous night, I again had actually met some of the fans that I knew from the forums, because this was, you know, people from all over the world could join these forums, and so there were fans from the US that I used to speak to all the time and that were coming to this show. So on the first night, you know, because I'd said, oh, I'm going along, I'll be in my silver thing, and they'd spotted me, they'd seen me, and we'd had, you know, I chatted to some of them, and it was really, really nice. You know, that first night felt really exciting, and really there was a lot of good energy in the crowd. But the second night just wasn't so good. I think there were more kind of minor celebrities and music industry people, and I could see that Justin was finding it quite frustrating, and I think also they were probably a bit tired, like after everything that had gone on the night before. I think there just wasn't quite as much energy. I certainly didn't have as much energy, even though it was still a really good show, and they played really well and he sang really well, but I think it was, it didn't quite have the same punch as it had had the night before. But yeah, it was good, and by that point I was very, very tired, and so we just kind of like had a couple of drinks and stuff, and then had to go back to the hotel because I just I couldn't do another night the same as what we had, what we'd done the night before. So yeah, and then I remember my friend kind of dragging me round Universal Studios the next day, and I was just so tired. I just was like, I don't care about any of this. I'm sure it's great, but like, I just want to go home now. Hollywood is a dump. LA, nothing much. I really couldn't recommend it. I didn't think there was very much to see at all. It just wasn't pleasant, and we were, I suppose, having been out kind of on Sunset Strip, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But I wouldn't say that you felt particularly safe, obviously, for obvious reasons. And it just, it isn't somewhere that I would go had it not been for the reasons that I was there. But I'm really glad that I did, and I'm really, really like amazed at just the fact that all that had actually happened. And yeah, sort of, I have Stig to thank for that, which I have thanked him many times over the years for all of that. It was super kind of him, and something that I will always remember. So yeah, and then the next time that I actually went to see them, because they were still sort of at their peak, I suppose, like throughout that whole year, 2004. They headlined the Reading and Leeds festivals. So that was the next opportunity that I had to go and see them. So that was in the summer, and so yeah, I'd gone along to both Reading and Leeds. And again, I went with my friend who I'd been to Strasbourg and LA with, and she actually had kind of got free tickets for the Leeds festival because she had some family that lived in the village, and the people who kind of live there get free tickets. So so we were all going. We had these tickets. And I somehow managed to get myself backstage after going up to Leeds, and it was really, really great. So the Wild Hearts were there again. So I was hanging out with Ginger and the guys from the Wild Hearts. And just having a really nice, we were just all having a nice chat and having a drink and stuff. And then lots of because festivals are quite a family thing. And so lots of the band members had their families there. They're sort of girlfriends, brothers, sisters. There was just a huge crowd of people that were kind of friends with or related to them. And I met, because Frankie has got quite a lot of brothers. He's got quite a big family. One of his brothers is actually the comedian Phil Kay, who was there. And so I met him, and I met a few of his other brothers as well. And one of them kind of invited me to go back to the hotel where they were all staying. So all the band and all the family were all kind of staying at this hotel. in Leeds, or just outside of Leeds. So he told me where it was, and he said, "Oh, well, we'll be going back there after this." So I sort of said, "Well, great, okay, I will kind of see you there." And I was expecting it to be, I suppose, after the whole LA experience, I was kind of expecting it to be quite a lot of alcohol, quite, maybe some minor celebrities, just kind of people hanging out, maybe playing guitar. I thought it was going to be one of those kind of parties, where, someone wearing, because again, I was, at this point, my silver catsuit thing was still just about, kind of intact. It was just about holding up. But as you can imagine, after like several gigs and shows and parties and things, it was starting to show quite a bit of wear. Quite a few of the sequins had fallen off, and it was starting to kind of get a little bit ripped and around the bottom and stuff. So but anyway, this is what I was wearing, because it seemed to work quite well in terms of getting me into places and getting me backstage and things like this. I think a lot of the time, security people or whoever just kind of assumed that I was something to do with the band. I never actually said that I was, and I never actually lied about anything. I think it's sometimes more about like what you don't say, and just like showing up and just appearing confident and as if you're supposed to be there. So yeah, I just didn't, or maybe I just looked so crazy that no one was really willing to kind of question me. I'm not sure, but anyway, it had been working quite well for me. So there I was, turned up at this hotel where they were all staying, and it was quite late by this point. It was like after the festival, so it must have been midnight or maybe later. And I went in and I walked in, and it was a huge place. It was like this big kind of country mansion hotel place, and it was absolutely huge. And there was like a big lounge area where basically that's where everyone was. Everyone had kind of gathered in there, and I saw Dan, I saw Ed, I saw Justin's girlfriend, who was also the manager of their band at the time. I recognised her, I knew who she was, and I also kind of saw Justin and his parents, his mum and dad, and I think there were other people's like kind of parents and family were there. There was a table with kind of trays of sandwiches, like cheese and pickle sandwiches, and sort of various like nibbles and bits and pieces, and like the parents were in their slippers and things. It was very much like I don't know, like Christmas round at your relative's house. It was very much like a family gathering. It wasn't really like cocaine and hookers LA. Like, I'm not saying that's what happened in LA, but I just mean that it wasn't like sex, drugs and rock and roll. It was like mum and dad in their slippers, cheese and pickle sandwiches, and then there's me, sort of this mad girl, because I was on my own as well at that point. My friend had gone home because she decided that she didn't want to kind of gate crash and all the stuff that I was doing. So she just said, "Oh, just come back whenever." And or, you know, give me a call and let me know what you're doing. And she was just like, right, stay safe, Godspeed. so I'd come here on my own. And yeah, just walked in, and it was one of those moments where everyone just gives you this look like, and who the hell are you? And but you know, I actually fortunately was recognised by the band. You know, Frankie came over and started speaking to me, and Ed did as well, actually. You know, and Dan, and but Dan was more like, "Oh, it's you again," kind of bemused, I suppose. And he said, how do you do this? Like, how do you always know where we are, and how do you always get in? Like, you don't have a pass or anything. How are you doing this? He said, you know, my girlfriend couldn't get backstage earlier on because she didn't have a laminate. But I saw you talking to the Wild Hearts, and, you know, he was like, I don't get how you're doing this. I think he was a little bit, I mean, he was kind of laughing as well. He wasn't like angry or annoyed. I think he was sort of maybe a little bit freaked out, but clearly I'm not a very like threatening presence. I'm 5'2", I'm really little, and I'm clearly not kind of posing any kind of problem for anyone. And I just said, I don't know really. I just wear this and turn up, and here I am. So you know, it was cool. It was all fine. And I had some sandwiches. I spoke to Phil Kay, who's Frankie's brother. He's a very nice guy as well. And you know, we were all just kind of chatting again and talking about how things were going, and what they thought of the LA gig and everything. Which they said, yeah, we'd kind of felt that the second night hadn't gone down quite as well, and how that had been quite frustrating for them. But they were having a great time anyway. You know, they'd just done the Reading and Leeds Festival, and they were gonna, you know, they'd go on later that year to kind of win 3 Brit Awards. So yeah, everything was going absolutely great for them. And yeah, so the next morning, I did briefly get to speak to Justin before I left, because I'd kind of, there was a spare hotel room that was part of like all their booking, and I'd managed to kind of, you know, someone kindly offered me to stay there because it was kind of too late to be going back to my friend's family's house. And so when I got up to leave in the morning, I got to, everyone was leaving, and my voice was almost completely gone from having spent, you know, the last couple of days screaming and singing and shouting at festivals, and, you know, and actually kind of smoking quite a lot as well. Like, they all used to smoke. And so like everyone at that gathering was all, we just sat there kind of smoking all night. It's absolutely terrible, I know, but you know, really good fun at the time. But I'd completely lost my voice, and so I desperately wanted to talk to Justin before I left and tell him, you know, how much I loved him and everything. But like nothing would really come out. So it was just this kind of quite awkward exchange where he again was really nice, and he just said, "Oh, you know, thanks for coming to see us, and it was really cool, you know, see you again." And I just kind of said, "Yeah, thank you," and it was really great to see you. I couldn't really speak, and I was just a mess. So yeah, that again was a really memorable experience and quite surreal, I guess. And then after that, I think the following year they didn't really do very much. I mean, towards the end of that year, they played Wembley, which I went to see them, but that was kind of the last time I suppose I saw them in a really huge venue or doing a really massive gig. But I didn't actually get to kind of see or speak to them at that one. Then the next year, I think they were trying to put together their second album, so they didn't really do very much kind of touring or gigging. The next time I actually was able to go and see them was 2006, and by that time the cracks were already starting to show. Frankie had left the band, so I think that was kind of the first blow, really. Because I kind of thought, well, how are they gonna carry on without Frankie? And Stig was still working with them at the time. I was still in contact with him, and when I found out about what happened, or that Frankie had quit, I kind of said, well, like, what are they going to do? And he told me that Richie, who was someone that I'd also known and met, because he was Dan's guitar tech, that they were going to actually have Richie playing bass. So I thought, wow, okay, I guess that makes sense. You know, someone they know, and they know that he can play. And he is actually very good, and he is a really good singer as well. So I thought, okay, maybe that will bring something different to their direction, I guess. So as I said, I didn't see them throughout that year. It wasn't until 2006 that I went to see them at. They played Alexandra Palace in North London, and so I went to that. I went to that gig, and that was a really strange one. That was a really strange one. It wasn't sold out, so that was the first time I'd been to see them play somewhere that wasn't sold out. And actually, the hall was only, I don't know, maybe just over half full. So that was very odd. And I think there are several reviews of that gig that are out there. You can go and look them up. I'm not going to draw attention to them particularly because they were very negative and very critical. And I think unfairly. I mean, they were trying to kind of get some of their new songs, you know, into the set. They were trying to do different things, still trying to keep the show like fresh and exciting, maybe trying to go in a slightly different direction. But I think within the band there were problems, there were tensions, and they had a different bass player. Obviously they had Richie and not Frankie. It wasn't what it had been. But I did see Sue there, and I went over and asked her if she would. I gave her this photo and asked her if she would give it to Justin to sign for me, which she did very kindly. So that's how I've got a signed photo. She was absolutely lovely. I think by that point they'd broken up. I'm fairly sure they'd broken up by that point. But she was still their manager, so obviously she was still there. And she was a really, you know, she was great. She was really nice. She was really kind. So yeah, I'm glad I went to that, and I'm glad I got my photo signed. But I can remember feeling worried after that gig. I remember feeling a bit nervous that perhaps things were not quite going as well as they had been. So then the next opportunity that I had to go and see them was in Hamburg in 2006, again, like later that year. And I remember I just had this feeling, I just had this very kind of strange feeling that this would be it. You know, by that point, their second album was out. So One Way Ticket had come out. And there was some, I think it's a great album. And produced by Roy Thomas Baker, who produced some of Queen's albums. He produced My Chemical Romance, Green Day, I think. I don't know, I'm not that up on my producers, to be honest. But I know that he's a really, really good one. You know, if you're a rock band, you want him or Mutt Lange, basically. And I think he did an absolutely cracking job of the production on this album. It's 100 times better in terms of the production than Permission to Land. And that's no disrespect to Pedro Ferreira, who I actually met as well at that Strasbourg gig. It's just that, and Permission to Land, for all sorts of reasons, it was done on much more of a budget. It was recorded mostly live. And it's really got that live feel, and that's what makes it so much fun. And you know, it's very close to what you will hear when you go and see them. Of course, these songs that have kind of a higher production value and have got much more in terms of like soundscapes and effects, and like not like a prog album or anything, it's still rock, but you know, there's like string sections and things that you're, you know, it's got synths and things. It's stuff that you're not necessarily gonna easily be able to reproduce on stage. So I think maybe musically some of that factored into why these shows weren't quite coming over as well. I'm not sure, but yeah, I've got a few photos of the gig that I went to in Hamburg. And as you can see, when you may or may not be able to see, Justin was looking quite different at that point. You know, I think it's fair to say that you could tell that he wasn't really looking after himself. He certainly wasn't fitting into any of his catsuits anymore. And mine had disintegrated by that point. Like mine had completely fallen apart. So like I wasn't wearing that to their gigs anymore. There's a picture of Richie. So as you can see, that's quite a different image from the one that they had initially. You know, Frankie was and is still very flamboyant, you know, very unique in his look that he creates. You know, Richie, I mean, he was cool. He is cool, and he looked cool. But maybe a little bit too cool for a band like The Darkness. I don't know, he just didn't really... It didn't seem to fit, you know? Even though he's a great musician and a good singer, it just didn't... Image-wise, the look kind of wasn't right. But then Justin was, yeah, kind of looking a bit different as well. And at that point, I really started to think, I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be around as a band. you know. And I think in the same year, again, these fears and suspicions were kind of confirmed, because Justin kind of went off and did a solo project. He did a solo single, which was a cover of the Sparks song, This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us. And he did this under the name British Whale. I don't know where that name came from. And I think that guy is a darts player, because Justin's very into darts. And the video, so that's the CD single. This is the DVD with the video that he made. And a friend of mine, again, who I knew from the Darkness forums, had been featured in the video because he asked for some fans to go along. And she was really sweet, and she gave me one of these special Justin Hawkins dart flights that she'd been given on the set, and she gave that to me because she's a really lovely person. So that's kind of cool. So that was from his solo project, but again, that wasn't a good sign in terms of direction of travel with the Darkness. And shortly after that, he did indeed leave the band. So that was kind of it. He left. There was no more Darkness. And I believe he went to rehab to get some help with his drinking and other addiction issues. I can't really comment on any of that, but I was worried. I was worried for him. I've been worried for him since I seen them in Ali Pali and since the Hamburg gig. I was worried about him, about his health. I was worried about what was going to happen with the band. And as it turns out, he wasn't well at the time and the band split up. So after that, I just kind of felt bereft, really, because Justin obviously kind of disappeared from public life. I mean, and rightly so, because it was really the weight of their success and the fame and the things that came with it that had got him to that point in his life. So he needed to step back from all of that. He needed to step away from it. I think everyone understands that. I think everyone can appreciate that. In their documentary that came out last year, he kind of said it was a life and death situation. He said, I knew how to stop it. I had to take the battery out. He had to leave the band. It was unsustainable. He couldn't continue. So it wasn't something that I wasn't angry about it as a fan. I was just sad. I was really sad. Obviously, I'd had a lot of good times over the last kind of couple of years with being a fan and following them and going to these gigs and having these experiences and things. So I was really sad that wasn't, I couldn't do that anymore. That there would be no more of their music to listen to. Obviously, I had the 2 albums, I had the B-sides, all the singles and everything that they brought out. So I just got my hands on anything and everything that I could, and then sort of crossed my fingers and hoped and waited, and I thought that they'll be back, or he'll be back, or something will happen later on. He just needs to take a little bit of time out and sort through things. So that was completely understandable. And actually at that point, I think personally, it was probably for the best for me. It was probably a good thing for me. Like, this obsession had sort of taken over my life for a short time. I was prioritizing it above everything else, like studies, career, job, relationships, any friends who were like outside of this circle of darkness fans that I knew, who I'd become really attached to, but at the expense, I suppose, of some of the other relationships in my life. My relationship with my partner at the time, I wouldn't say because of my sort of darkness obsession, but I think it certainly played into the fact that we then broke up, because he hadn't really been part of it, and hadn't really been involved. He'd come to the first ever gig with me in Plymouth, but then he hadn't been involved in any of the rest of it. And we used to have arguments about it and things. And it did impact on my personal life. So by that point, I'd met someone else, and was starting a relationship with somebody else, and I think that would also have been derailed quite badly if I hadn't sort of had this break that just came about because of what was happening with the band. So it allowed me to, I suppose, take a step away from it and refocus on my own life and what I was doing and where I was going and all the rest of it. So yeah, I think ultimately everyone benefited in a way. However, of course, it was at their peak, and so who knows what they would have gone on to do if they hadn't have broken up. But then the other way I look at it is that there could have been like really tragic consequences if Justin continued the way he was going. So he then sort of re-emerged around kind of late 2007, 2008 time with a new band called Hot Leg. He'd changed his image again, and he was in this kind of glam sort of hair metal 80s style band, with actually some really good musicians. And I think, they wrote some quite catchy tunes. I checked it out. I didn't buy their album or anything. But I did go to see them because they came to play in Exeter in 2008. They played at a tiny, very small, tiny venue called The Cavern. And so I thought, well, I can't not go. I'm not going to not go and see Justin. Like, I missed him. It had left a bit of a hole. It left a bit of a void in my life, So I wanted to go along and see him and support him. And so I did. And I, as it was the town where I lived, it was hardly an inconvenience. So I didn't have to travel anywhere. I didn't have to kind of book a hotel or do anything like that. So I just went along, and I went fairly early to do the queuing up, hoping to catch them on the way into soundcheck thing, which sure enough I did. And we actually went for a coffee. So the Cavern is next door to a coffee place called the Boston Tea Party in Exeter, and I think it was a Sunday. It was super quiet in town. It was just a really blah Sunday, very, very quiet. Boston Tea Party is usually really busy, but there was like no one in there. And so we went in, and Justin said, "Oh, can I get you a coffee?" And we had a chat, and by that point he had completely, like, he was off of everything. So obviously sober, not drinking or anything. He'd gone, like, he was off caffeine, he'd gone vegan. I mean, he looked good, you know, he looked healthy, he looked good, he seemed happy. So it was just really, really nice. And so he bought me, I think at the time, a flat white or something like that. And he had, I remember this, a steamed soy milk latte. Like, it was just a cup of vaguely warm soy milk. I thought, I just can't think of anything more miserable than just some steamed soy milk in a cup. And is there anything less rock and roll? Like, I can't think of anything less rock and roll than steamed soy milk in a cup. And it kind of tickled me, really, that he was this rock god, you know, this absolute kind of epitome of everything that I'd always thought a rock star was or should be. Of course, initially when they first come out, when he was in the darkness, and that was certainly the persona that he projected. That was certainly, as Frankie had said to me, that was the sort of fantasy that he created. And I guess when I seen him in 2008, before the Hot Leg gig at the Cavern, I think the person that I met was Justin Hawkins. You know, Justin Hawkins, who is a vegan and who is very kind of health conscious and is just a person, and a very nice person, and a very funny, sweet, kind person, who was kind enough to take some time to talk to me, talk about guitars and what had happened to the guitars that I'd played, you know, the Silver Burst and the Pink Burst, and that's how I found out kind of what had happened to them. And, you know, we weren't there for very long. I mean, he had to go in and sound check and get ready for the gig. But we had our coffee and a chat, and as ever, he was very personable and friendly and open and chatty. I think I just kind of couldn't get over this sort of duality or mismatch between the person that I was talking to then and there at that point and what my sort of perceptions of him had been prior to that. So it was just interesting. It was really interesting. But I was glad that he seemed to be getting things together, pulling everything together. You know, he seemed happy. He seemed to be having fun. I think, if nothing else, Hot Leg was fun. It was definitely a fun project for him. They did a good show that night, and you know, I'd enjoyed it, but it did make me miss. It made me miss the darkness, and I thought, come on, Justin, get on the phone. You know, don't be like Liam and Noel. You know, speak to Dan. I didn't say any of that, but of course I was hoping that at some point there'd be a reunion. They are family after all, and you think, well, you can't sort of fall out and that's it and never speak to them again, surely. So, you know, I'd hoped for that, really. So I didn't get into Hot Leg, mainly because it, you know, it wasn't the darkness. That's the only reason, really. So yeah, then there was a few more years. I think it was about 3 more years then until they did actually get back together. So in that time, I'd say, not that I lost interest. I definitely didn't lose interest. I'm still a Darkness fan, very much so, and always have been. But I was certainly over the initial stages of obsession, I guess. So when I found out that they were getting back together and they were gonna, they were touring again and playing again and starting to record again, I was really, really happy. But I mean, and also I was a bit older, I was getting on a bit by then, I was in my 30s. So I was kind of a real person by that point. I was a lot more kind of settled. I was focusing on my career. I was married by that point. So yeah, things were very, very different by the time they came back. Certainly, like in my life, and yeah. So I went along to see them the first time in 2011 in Bristol, and it was nice. It was lovely. It was great to see them again. But I think Justin hadn't quite sort of nailed his image this time round, and he was very, I feel like it was an in-between stage, and he was very experimental, and his hair was kind of short and he had a mustache, and then came the braces and things, and getting his teeth kind of straightened and stuff, which I never thought he needed to do, really. I thought he was amazing just exactly as he was. I don't think he needed to do anything. But I know it's about how you feel about yourself, isn't it? So he obviously felt like he needed to do that to be happier. So, and that's fine and that's great. But I think when they were first sort of making their comeback, it took him a good while, a couple of years actually, I think, to kind of figure out what he wanted his image to be this time around. Because I think he wanted to sort of distance himself a little bit from the catsuits and stuff, although he would still wear them on stage. But he was trying different looks, and most bands do, most musicians do. Everyone moves on, don't they? So yeah, so it was nice to see them back again, and then the next time was in 2013, and that was an excellent gig, and that was at the O2 in Oxford. And I still have the set list from that gig, which is one of the best, I have to say. This is one of the best set lists, I think, from any of the times that I've been to see them, because not only have you got all the good stuff off of Permission to Land, but you have quite a lot of songs that they rarely, if ever, like I've very, very rarely heard them play live. Holding My Own, that's one of my favourite songs of theirs. The only other time that I'd heard them play that was at Wembley in 2004. So that doesn't get played a lot at all. They did their Street Spirit cover, Radiohead cover. Love that. Absolutely brilliant. They do a real like metal version of Street Spirit. It's absolutely cracking. All my favourites really, and the Christmas song, because it was December. So, which that's just got to be the best Christmas song ever, right? It certainly is, in my opinion, anyway. So yeah, and a few of their newer songs, as well as some of the B-sides that I really love. Making Out, and that as an opener goes down an absolute storm. So yeah, and One Way Ticket, which is, in my opinion, the best song from their second album, One Way Ticket to Hell and Back. And they just seemed to have a really good time that night. And my old friend, he's not old, I mean my friend that I'd known for quite a long time by that point, Stig, went along to that gig as well. So I got to see him and hang out with him and catch up with him, which was lovely. And I also got given this rather nice, fetching Darkness bobble hat from Frankie. So that was really cool. That was really nice as well. And of course, really, really nice to have Frankie back. Really, really pleased that he rejoined the band. Because not only because he is a fantastic bass player, like he's musically just amazing, but also because he completes the band, you know, he fits so well. Like they were friends, like they've been friends forever. Like Empire, the band what Frankie and Dan's band before the Darkness, you know, that was what started this whole thing. So I was really, really, really happy, just for so many reasons, to go and see them in 2013. And that made me feel really positive about them again, and kind of made me think, yeah, you know, they're back. And they did then start making like really good progress. They started kind of really forming this cult band status, you know, which is where they're at now. And I think the key to that as well is the fact that Rufus joined as the drummer. I think it was a couple of years after this, or was it 2014? Not sure, but it was not long after this that Rufus joined the band. And I think that just gave them an entire new lease of life then. So, you know, because he's amazing, but also he's quite a bit younger, like than Dan and Justin and Frankie. So I think that sort of injected some kind of much needed new energy into it. And I think, you know, it's lovely to see how they sort of play off of each other, and they have real fun on stage. The last time I saw them was November 21. They came and played Exeter at the Great Hall and up at university, which was fab. And, you know, the place was packed out. It was sold out. Everyone had a fantastic time. You know, the crowd were really engaged. Justin was, you know, he was back on top form. Rufus and Frankie were really kind of grooving together. It was such a good gig. You know, Justin and Dan were kind of having a good time. And yeah, I really, really hope that hope I get many more opportunities to go and see them. They've done some great albums over the last few years. Motor Heart was their last one, which is awesome, actually. That's something that I listen to quite a lot. And I think that they're, you know, they've kept all the ingredients that made them initially successful. The songwriting is as good as it ever was. Guitars, you know, they're obviously like the central kind of part of the sound, but whilst, you know, taking some risks, doing some different things, trying out new directions. There's even a song, I think it's on Last of Our Kind, that Frankie sings, a song called Conquerors, which is a great song. And who knew, where did that voice come from? Who knew that Frankie could sing? That's really cool. So yeah, I'm still very much a fan, and I'm pretty sure that I always will be. But nowadays, for various reasons, because I have, commitments, a young family, all the rest of it. I'll never be able to. I'll never have the kind of freedom or financial freedom to go and do mad things like follow a band around the world. But I'm really, really glad that I did, and I will never have any regrets about having done that, and that being a huge part of my life early on. So thank you very much to the Darkness, all of them, and to Stig, and to all my friends and the people that I met through the Darkness, and all of the happy memories that it's given me, and I've really enjoyed sharing them with you. So I I hope that was interesting for you all. And please let me know if you've got any kind of stories either about the Darkness or similar kind of stories about your own experiences with bands that you'd like to share. And please comment and let me know. Cheers.